Hey everyone, it's George here once more with another deck list. And this time I am going to be talking a little bit about the One Who Governs Rituals Sacrifice Glass. This is a very interesting deck, actually. I enjoy playing it a lot. However, it really needs a lot of support to become actually competitively viable. So yeah, but if there's anyone interested in building it, maybe you can have an idea of how this deck is built and what it actually does. So yeah, anyways, if you like the video, please feel free to share and like and comment. That's the way that I know that my videos are being watched and people like them. And also, if there's anything that you would like me to talk about, or if I said something that was wrong, please let me know in the comments. So yeah, anyways, without any further ado, let's get started with the video. So first I will be talking about the Rideline. The Rideline is actually very interesting. First of all, the grade 0, sorry, it can be anything. This deck doesn't require you to have a specific grade 0. So yeah, I'm using the grade 0 that is from this new box, the Booster 03. But you can use any grade 0 that you want. Now, as for the grade 1, again, as many other Ridelines, usually grade 1 and grade 2 require the grade 1, 2, and 3 to work. However, this one is actually a little bit more standard, like more open. So, for example, this grade 1 basically allows you to ride for free, and it draws you one card, but it has another effect, which is your opponent also draws one card. So if you choose to ride for free, basically you're giving your opponent one free card. In a way, it's fine, I suppose, but honestly, I think like giving your opponent one free card is never good. So yeah, anyways, just for showcasing, this Rideline this is how it works. I was running this grade 1. It worked fine, I suppose. Again, it's just like a free ride. So yeah. Then for the grade 2, it actually doesn't do anything on grade 2 turn. But when this card is rolled by Sacrifice Glass, you can Soul Blast 1 and search for Sweet Bait, which is the order that is required basically to play this deck. That's basically it. Honestly, I think the Rideline is pretty mid. It doesn't really do too much. There's many other ways to also search for the Sweet Bait order card, and also usually you play like 3 of them. And also for the grade 1, I think it could be replaceable with something else. I've been also trying the Bruce Rideline, and I tried the grade 1 from Bruce and also the grade 2 from the Favernil Stride deck. Sorry, not Stride deck set, Favernil deck set, which basically just allows you to Soul Blast 1 and ride for free if I just wanted to ride for free. But otherwise, yeah, it's just pretty standard, pretty simple. It works, I suppose. Then we have the main Vanguard, which would be the One Who Governs Ritual Sacrifice Glass. So basically, this guy is the main boss-ish. It's kind of interesting because this like kind of has 2 bosses. The first one is this one, which basically at the start of your turn, you get an ability that every time an opponent's rear guard is retired or a card from your opponent's side of the field is retired from Guardian Circle, you energy charge 1. And then it has another effect. So when this unit attacks at the end of the battle, you can energy blast 4, and you search your deck, your hand, or your drop zone for one Grand Dogma and write it as stand. However, it has a very huge counter, or very huge bad side, is that card loses the drive checks, and it in a way just gets 1500 K power. However, it loses drive checks. So yeah, it's just like one extra attack that does basically not so much, because also your opponent gets to draw one card if you ride. So basically, you're just giving your opponent one other way to defend about against that next attack. And yeah, it's fine, I guess. It doesn't gain any power. It doesn't do anything too fancy. I think it's just like a one extra attack, and that's pretty much it. Um, Now, the other card, which I classify here as a support card, but actually I would say it's also like main boss in a way. It's the Manifesting Great Horizon Grand Dogma. So this card has a lot of effects. The first effect is like, if this card is bound by any other effect, it just goes back to the drop zone. So immediately you cannot cheat this card and get her to be many times on the bind zone. So yeah, it has to be bind by her own effect, otherwise it just doesn't work. Then at the end of the battle, this card attacked, you can retire one of your opponent's rear guard. So again, if you had Sacrifice Glass in your Vanguard circle at first, you retire one card and you energy charge one. And also, if you have another Grand Dogma in your bind zone, you can retire another rear guard. So basically, it's just 2 energy charge. Then, if you have 2 Grand Dogma in your bind zone or more, at the end of the battle this attacked, you can just restand it. Now, the point here is, basically, you write this card after having 2 of this on the bind zone, and you have 3 Vanguard attacks. The problem is 2 of these Vanguard attacks are no drive checks. And there is another point. If you keep this card on the Vanguard circle after you have 2 Grand Dogma in bind, you can just keep her as Vanguard and then just attack twice with her with Twin Drive each time. However, for this to happen, you basically have to be 3 turns already on your Grade 3 Vanguard, which, to be honest, for most of the games, they are already over by that moment. Either your opponent decked out, or you are super dead, or your opponent is already also dead, which the third option doesn't really happen that much. But yeah, normally this effect doesn't trigger like that, actually. But it's pretty good, I suppose. I hope in the future this deck gets any good support that allows this card to be actually good. Yeah, so if Sacrifice Glass is in your soul at the end of the turn, you can just bind this unit and ride the Sacrifice Glass. So yeah, another support card is Sweet Bait. This is one of the other main cards for this deck. So basically, this card has two effects depending on the Vanguard. If you have Sacrifice Glass as your Vanguard, your opponent gets to call 3 cards to rearguard, and also all the cards in the rearguard circles and also in the drop zone lose abilities. And those cards cannot be moved from rearguard to Guardian by any means. So yeah, basically in a way it's kind of like counter for the Luard PG thingy that they do. So if Luard has the PGs on the back row, they cannot move them to the Guardian circle. And even if they could, I think the abilities are negated, so they wouldn't do anything anyways. So yeah, your opponent basically gets a +3 from their drop zone to their field, and then you get to draw 1 card for every 3 rear guards in total between your opponent's field and your field. So yeah, you can draw a maximum of 3 cards basically. And yeah, basically what this is doing is just setting your turn, so you can just retire everything and then just energy charge a lot of cards. Because technically your opponent can just like not call anything, and you don't energy charge a lot. So yeah, then there's another effect. The second effect is if you have Grand Dogma as your Vanguard. So the first thing is if you didn't ride and you have Grand Dogma as your Vanguard, you can activate your Persona ride, which is very good because you probably would not ride because most of the Grand Dogmas are already in the bind zone. And the other effect is you can return a card from each grade from your drop zone to your deck, except for heal triggers or over triggers. So that way you cannot just fill your heal triggers back, or just if you guard it with your over trigger, just put it back. That would be apparently too broken, which again, it's not. I don't think it's so broken anyways. You barely get to activate this effect like ever. So yeah, and many times I played this deck, and actually I've never used the second effect because it's just too late. And yeah, locals is full of people playing way stronger decks, and either they deck out or again, I just never get to proc the second effect. I don't think there's a way yet for you to get Grand Dogma earlier. So yeah, that's the main support card. And then we have this other grade 2 card, which will be Eternal Musician Musi. Again, this card has two effects. The first one is if you have Sacrifice Glass as your Vanguard, and the other effect is if you have Grand Dogma as your Vanguard. So the first one is if your Vanguard attacks and you have Sacrifice Glass, you get to retire one of your opponent's rear guard. So yeah, basically you go 3 with the order card, and then you retire one of the 3 rear guards with this guy, and you get 2 energy, charge 1. And then there's another effect that is if you have Grand Dogma Vanguard, every time Grand Dogma attacks, it gets extra 10,000 power. So the main thing with this guy is like first you start your turn with the Sacrifice Glass, and if you have 2 of this card in the rear guards, in the front row rear guards actually, you get to retire 2 of your opponent's rear guards. So yeah, 1 for each. And then you get to ride into Grand Dogma, and then Grand Dogma attacks, and you get extra 10,000 power. So it basically turns into 20k attacker. Just again, and here as the main strategy is just basically hit hard. The first time, basically, it's just going to hit with 20,000 because Grand Dogma can attack only once. But if you have 2 Grand Dogmas in your bind zone, it just restuns, and it's a 30k attacker, which is very strong, but again, it's kind of 30k very, very late into the game. So yeah, again, as main strategy, I said just hit hard. Actually, that's pretty much all it does, and it just avoids you from dying to your own effects because you're giving pluses to your opponent. So if you're not able to retire your opponent's rear guards, it's not like they go back to drop zone at the end of the turn or anything. You just keep them on their field, and they just build. You helped your opponent build their field, when also giving them an extra card because Sacrifice Glass allows your opponent to draw 1 card. And yeah, this is the main grade 2 support. So you most of the time want to have this card in your hand or in your field. Again, you will suffer a lot if you don't have it, because you're just giving your opponent 3 rear guards and a draw, which, yeah, I think it's very good for your opponent. Then we have the grade 2 that is also from the Rideline. I included this one in the main deck just as a 2-off. Most of the time, I want this card to be in my hand at least once, because if you are a very unlucky person and you get the Grand Dogma into your damage zone, basically you don't have any other way to recover that card unless you heal it. And if you don't heal because you're me and you're getting heal triggers whenever you cannot heal or you just draw them, then there's no way you can even activate the second restand effect. So yeah, this card is basically when you call it to the rear guard, you get to choose 1 Grand Dogma from your damage zone, add it to your hand, and choose 1 card from your hand and put it back into your damage zone. So it's not a heal, but it is kind of a counter charge also. So if you have Grand Dogma in your in your damage, you can just counterblast with her and then just use her effect and get it to your hand and put one other card face up in your damage zone. Now that's really good because you get to countercharge. The bad thing is that actually this deck doesn't really use any counterblast except for the order card, and also there's times when you don't really want to use that order card either. The draw is really good, but sometimes you're just giving your opponent also free rear guards, which again it's just not so good. So it depends on your hand and your field. And also there's another card that counterblasts in this deck. So yeah, maybe it's also good for that one. But it doesn't get any power, it doesn't do anything else, just call this card and recover one card from your damage zone if you have that Grand Dogma there. If not, then it doesn't do so much more. Then we have the grade 1, which is Miasma Balivis Madurwa. This card has two effects. The first effect is if you have this card in your rear guard and you have well, actually it doesn't really require you to have the sweet bait in your drop zone, but you can just discard it somehow. So basically this card just Soul Blast 1 and you can discard one card from your hand, and this turn you can activate sweet bait from your drop zone. And if you were to do that, that card would be sent back to the bottom of your deck instead of being discarded as usual. So yeah, this card is very useful in a way because it just allows you to use your sweet baits as discard fodders for riding every single turn, or you can just discard them also for your PG guards. So yeah, it just gives this a lot of more options to keep your hand and actually be able to play other cards and not having to discard them in other situations. So yeah, it's fine, I guess, and also it doesn't get any extra power. It's kind of a shame because now everything gets power except this deck somehow. And also it has another effect. It has, at the end of the turn, it basically Energy Blasts 5 and draws one card. Energy Blast 5 seems to be a very heavy cost, and it actually is. However, this deck energy charges a lot, so sometimes you will end up your turn with like 6 or 7 energy, or even like 5 energy exactly. And instead of just having that energy sitting there doing nothing, you can just Energy Blast those 5 and draw one card. Also, I can see this card being useful for other decks that don't use energy a lot. But for this deck it works very good, I think, and yeah, I kind of like it actually. Having one on the field always is very good. Yeah, the main strategy again is just for draw power basically, and also adding a little bit more consistency to playing the sweet bait. So yeah, if again, like I said, I don't really want to play sweet bait every single turn sometimes. But it's always good to have the option to be able to play it. So yeah, now we're going to move on to the different cards that you could play for your deck. Those are basically all the grade 1s and 2s and 3s that are main support for the sacrifice class. But these are a little bit more generic. Starting with Audience, I talked about this card before. But in this deck is actually especially good also because you're mostly going to be playing one order per turn. So yeah, basically you call this card by anything except from a card effect, from a unit's effect, sorry. And if you play the order, basically you can Soul Blast 1, check top 5 of your deck, and you can add one order to your hand or call one card among them. And there's another effect. When it attacks, you can just Soul Blast 3, gets extra 5,000, and draw one card. The second effect, I don't really use this so much in this deck, especially because it doesn't really generate a lot of soul. So actually, you don't soul charge so much, and you have just enough soul to make your plays. I've never felt short in soul actually, but I never felt I have to increase the amount of soul charge. So yeah, basically this card is very good because it just allows you to search for next turn your sweet bait in case you don't have the grade 1 and you cannot play your sweet bait in your drop zone. Or also it just allows you to search for your main pieces like the grade 2 Musi that you always want to have in your field. So yeah, it's just good for building field and keeping your hand, and also in case of being necessary, you can just Soul Blast 3 and draw 1 card. Then we would have the next card, this Ford and Revertis. This is the dual nation for Dark States and Dragon Empire. Basically, this card is another Soul Charge effect, and it gets 5,000 extra power if you call it from the hand. And it has two other effects. The first one is if you call this card and after you Soul Charge 1, you counter +1, and you can choose to either call 1 card from your soul or retire one of your opponent's grade 2 or greater rear cards. So sometimes you just don't have Musi in your hand, or you don't have any way to call it. And this guy is actually very good because you can just retire something instead of the Musi that would retire something. Kind of like a substitute. The problem is just a counterblast. But again, like I mentioned before, usually this deck doesn't really counterblast so much. So basically, most of the time you will just be counterblasting for the street bait and discard. That's pretty much it. So yeah, it's also one card that allows you to have early game. Otherwise, your early game is just hitting with your Vanguard. Most of the time, you don't want to call anything else from your hand because it doesn't really do anything. And yeah, and basically that's the whole strategy here. It just allows you to build your field or retire opponent's rear guards and get extra energy. That's basically it for this guy. And then for grade 1s, I actually like playing the Ford Color. This is also a new card. It just gives you 1 energy if it's called from hand. And also at the end of the battle this unit boosted, it just retires herself and draws you 1 card if you used one effect that did energy blast 3 at least once this turn. So again, this deck energy blasts basically for everything. So you can just use her very consistently. Usually your Vanguard attacks will be even Sacrifice Glass will attack first, and then you energy blast 4, and then Ride on Grand Dogma. So basically after first Vanguard attack, this effect is already useful. And yeah, it's basically just a very good draw engine, very reliable booster. If you don't have anything else, you can always just call her. It's just an 8k attacker, but it's fine, I think. If you have Musi or you have even Revaltis, they get extra power. So yeah, it's just a very good, simple card. Then I'm going to be talking about other options. First one, I will be talking about Amethyst. This card is actually very good with this deck because it just gives you extra shield power. Like I mentioned before, this deck doesn't really do that much until turn 3 or 4 after riding on grade 3. So you want to have a lot of defense. This card achieves that, and if for some reason you run out of counter blasts, you can also call him and just counter charge 1. But yeah, this is really just good as a defensive card. And also the other card is Avarice Rester. This card is also very reliable in case you need to play your order card and you don't have it in your hand. So basically you call this card to your rear guard, you discard 1, and then you just send from your deck to your drop zone an order card, and that turn you can play that order from your drop zone. So yeah, it's just another very consistent way to search for your sweet baits. I am actually sometimes thinking I want to play this guy instead of the Modura, but sometimes that extra draw is very useful also. And yeah, that's a very good extra option just in case someone is thinking maybe they want to play less of the order card and a little bit more shield power. Also 5,000 shield is, I guess, sometimes could make a difference. But yeah, it's another one of the options that I really like considering. And now for triggers, this is the lineup that I'm using. I am just playing 4 heal triggers, 8 criticals, and 4 front triggers. Sorry, not 8, 7 criticals and 4 front triggers. This deck wants to really have your Musi hitting very, very hard, so front triggers are always very good option. And the criticals, they are fine actually sometimes. I just play 7, but really they really don't make so much difference unless your Vanguard is hitting when you're attacking with the Sacrifice Glass. But yeah, I guess critical is just very standard. Front triggers also extra shield power. You really want that shield power. And as for over triggers, I've been trying different over triggers. The one that I think works the best with this one is the Dark States one. Because it basically just gives your Vanguard extra pressure, and if you ride into your Grand Dogma, it still keeps the 10,000 and critical. So basically every time you're attacking with 38,000 critical Grand Dogma, and if you happen to have 2 of the Grand Dogma already in your bind zone, it's 3 Vanguard attacks with extra 10 and critical, which is very strong, I think. And yeah, you can check this card any moment, and it's a perfect moment actually. The other over triggers are also very good, I think, but honestly I think the one that has the most pressure and the most use is this one. However, the trigger part, as usual, is a lot dependent on your playstyle and what you want to achieve. This is my lineup, but yeah, feel free to try anything else if you have any more ideas. And for Regalis Piece, there's these 3 cards that I think are very good. Again, this deck you want to focus a lot on shield power. So I think Evergreen Transfer and Protection Twincast, which is a new order card, are some of the best ones. Honestly, I cannot decide between Evergreen Transfer or Protection Twincast. I think they are both very amazing. Protection Twincast can be used for cases where your opponent attacks many times and the attacks are very, very low in power. And Evergreen Transfer is always very useful if your opponent is playing a deck that hits very hard. And the other card is the Bracing Angel Ladder. I like this one because also you can keep your field. You really, if you have, for example, your 2 Musi on your field, you want to keep them. So yeah, this card is always very, very good for that. The problem is you want to also be playing very consistently the Sweet Bait, and sometimes you don't really know how the turn is going to turn out. So you probably want to play most of the time Sweet Bait. So it feels really bad to have this card in your hand and not being very not being able to really decide easily which one you want to play, either this one or the other. Both are very good options. Sometimes one is better than the other, but the shield Regalis Piece, they're always useful in the opponent's turn. So yeah, now I'm going to be talking about some interactions. This deck again is very simple, very straightforward. Basically, you just attack with your Vanguard, and if you have Musi in your rear guards, you retire 1 on attack, then you ride into Grand Dogma, attack twice or once, 1 time or 2 times if you have Grand Dogma in your bind zone 2 times. And after Grand Dogma attacks, just Musi gets extra 10,000 power each attack. So it ends up being a 30k attacker. That's basically it, really. Then there's some extra interactions. You can play this order from your drop zone with either Maudura or the Great One. I forgot the name. Anyways, Avarice Dresser, I think. Yeah. And if you do this, basically you can either get free draws or activate Persona Ride. That's pretty much it. And about interactions, that's also pretty much it. Really, there's not so many more things to do. Now I'm going to be showing a little bit of the math here and why I think this deck is probably not so good now. And the red one, it's just basically showing your opponent's draws, and the white ones are showing what is your draws and your pluses. And we start in a bad position here with a +1 for your opponent. And also with the grade 1, yeah, but also the grade 3 gives your opponent a +1. And I think this affects way more than you drawing more cards, because it's trying to compensate that by allowing you to get a lot of draws also from your deck. But I think giving your opponent the option to just make their plays the next turn and also to defend, it's way worse than giving you the option to defend. Guarding is it's okay, it's good, and also giving you options to make plays is good, but if you're just giving your opponent the chance to get easy access to their game pieces, and also especially with this deck that is not very strong yet, doesn't have the chances to just punish your opponent for drawing and just going for the kill the same turn, it just leaves your opponent with big hand, and also leaves your opponent with many options to just drain your hand in one turn. So yeah, your opponent draws 2 cards, but also let's see here, the grade 1 Maudura, it's a +1 if you're basically only using the second effect, because if you're using the first effect, you're basically discarding 1. So it's a -1, and then you are drawing 1, so it's a +0 basically. And also considering you may have called it from your hand, then that's immediately a minus card. Unless you keep it, of course, for multiple turns in your field, then you start plussing maybe. Then if you're using the Avarice Rester, it's a -1 basically, because you're discarding to play 1 order. So yeah, there's that. Then you have For Color, it's +1 only if you call this card from your deck, or if you call it from your soul, for example, because otherwise it's just a +0, it just goes, it retires herself and draws you 1 card. So basically you call from hand, that's -1, retire, goes back to 0. That's it. And the Sweet Bait order, it's basically a +3 if you played it from your drop zone, and because it just draws you 3 cards by this not doing anything, just considering this card, of course. And it also has to be +3 maximum if you have basically full field and your opponent has full field as well. If you played it from your hand, it's just compensating from 1 card plus 2 other cards that you can draw as extra. But again, you have to consider, for this maximum effect, you have to call. You need to have full field, and your opponent also needs to have full field. So yeah, it's actually not plussing so much, really. It maybe looks like it, but honestly, not so really. Yeah, so I'm just going to show one deck example here. This is one of the decks that I played the most and that has shown me the most results. Here I'm using the Transfer, the Regalis Piece. I think in this case was helping me a little bit more because my locals were full of very full power decks. And otherwise, if you notice, I'm not playing any of the discard fodders for Rideline. You don't really need them, I think. Especially because your Grand Dogma can be activated or can be ridden from your drop zone, and also your Sweet Bait can be activated from your drop zone. So if you have them in your hand, you can just discard them and there's no issue with that. And also, by the time you activate Grand Dogma second effect or second restand, your deck is so thin that if you get to draw more cards, basically you're decked out. So yeah, this is the version I'm playing with. Maybe can be modified a little bit more to just be fixed for anyone's playstyle. But so far, I think it's just very fun and it works as a fun deck. There's no way you're beating the top tier decks with this one, and especially this Rideline is not good because it allows the best decks to just draw their best cards. And yeah, usually I would just draw my Overtrigger or my heal triggers from my deck. I can probably modify this Rideline and search something different. For example, here I'm not playing the Avarice Rester. Instead of playing the Grade 2s here, I can in my main deck, I can probably change them for the Avarice Rester, and the Rideline just switch it for something else. But yeah, it's pretty fun actually. This deck is, I'm gonna tell you, I didn't win so many games ever, but me and my opponents were laughing the whole time. So yeah, it was fun. And also, there's another big problem, just like the doll, what's the name? Nightmare dolls? Direful dolls. Yeah, that Direful dolls deck. It takes so long to do their stuff that the games have to be very long. So for tournaments, this deck is really bad because the tournament or the match time is over by the time you're trying to do anything actually. So basically it just results in double game loss, and neither you or your opponent go anywhere. So yeah, you just keep going down on the ranking, and yeah, that's pretty much it really. So as conclusions, well, this deck has a very good defense. It's very easy to pilot. It really doesn't require you to think too much about what you want to do. It's just repeating the same things, and your main plan is just to stay alive. That's basically it. And it doesn't have heavy counterblast. It just has 2 cards that pay counterblasts, and that's pretty much it. And it has a very innovative playstyle, I think. It's a very interesting concept, but so far it's not so good. Yeah, and actually, if you get to your Persona Ride turns, actually, Persona Ride is very consistent in this deck. If you get to play your Persona Rides every single turn, it can actually hit very hard, but that's pretty much it. It just hits hard. It doesn't really do anything else. It just pluses your opponent and hits hard at the same time, which in turn doesn't really achieve that much. So now, as a bad side of this deck is your opponent also pluses both hand and field. If you're not able to retire everything, then you're just giving your opponent free rear guards, and they choose what they want to call from their drop zone. It's not like you choose. They can just choose to call their game pieces and just hope that you don't kill all of them, which happens kind of often actually. Then yeah, like in the next point, if you cannot remove the opponent's field, then they get free rear guards and free draw. So it's just a nice person at that point. And it's also very, very slow. So again, most games are over by the time you're going to do whatever you want to do. Either time is up, your opponent decked out, or you died. Not always your opponent. You're probably not going to just kill your opponent. Very rarely they're going to get 6 damage. Anything else is going to happen except for that. So yeah, it's very, very, very slow. And if you want to have power turns, it's very reliable and Musy to get actually very good turns. So if you don't have that card, basically you're just hitting with vanilla Vanguard twice and vanilla rear guards once each. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this deck. Anyways, having that said, I think it's a very, very fun playstyle, very fun concept, and I think that Bushi can really build up on this archetype and give it extra support that makes it just interesting to play, or more reliable for playing against top decks. For now, I think it's very, very cheap. Actually, in Japan, you can get the whole deck for around 1,500 yen, I think, which would be like around $15 or $20, maybe. It's super, super cheap. And yeah, I mean, that's what I got it for. And if you just want to have fun, this is very good. If you want to actually be competitive, yeah, maybe you or you would like to play something different. Anyways, that's pretty much it for this deck. Thank you for getting all to this point. If you enjoyed, feel free to like, share, subscribe, comment if there's anything else. If there's any other deck that you would like me to talk about, feel free to also let me know. And that's the way that I can know this is doing something actually. Anyways, if you tried it, also please let me know and tell me your experience with this deck. Thank you for your time and your attention, and see you next time. Bye bye.